So I think there's a lot of people that, in their attempt to do things that are expected of them and to conform to societal pressures, they force themselves into a situation where they live unauthentically. So individuals that are in unhappy relationships or unhappy marriages or even unhappy
Mhm.
work situations, but following that path or that journey because, you know, it looks good on paper, it looks good on social media. So even if um, you have that great job and you're earning a lot of money, or you're in that relationship with this wonderful person who appears wonderful on social media, behind closed doors, a lot of people are unhappy. They're in situations that don't bring them any joy, that bring them actually a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, possibly even depression. And they force themselves to walk that path and to stay on that journey because of societal pressure.
Hello and welcome to Blending and Mending. On the podcast today, I've got a very, very special guest, book author of I Am Love. I've got Marishka Appalsamy with me. Marishka, how are you?
I'm good, Chantal. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time just to join us on the podcast and to chat through your book. You must be so excited that it's out there finally.
It's been a long journey, so yes, I'm very happy that the book is finally out there and it's reaching those that need to read it.
So beautiful. And for me, so my daughter, I bought the book and she saw the picture of the book on the kitchen counter and she said to me, Mommy, is this for me? So I said, No, my baby, this is a book for an adult. It's for mommy. And she's like, Oh, but I love the picture. This lady looks so happy. So I just thought that was such a beautiful way to look at the cover of this book. Let me just show you for those who haven't seen it yet, of this free-spirited woman, but we know that there's this quite a complex character in terms of the book and what she needs to navigate as a woman. So, Marishka, let's dive straight into it and share with us, just high level, what is the key purpose and the concepts of this book that you really wanted to lift as a narrative and a story for people reading it?
So firstly, thanks so much for sharing that about your daughter. That's so special to me. That's exactly the kind of idea that we were going for when we were doing the cover illustration, just around
Oh,
um,
beautiful.
being a free spirit and just living life despite what's going on in the background. Okay, so the reason I started writing the book was I went through a lot of difficult life experiences in my lifetime, and I think everybody can relate. Nobody kind of sails through life without any trauma or difficult experiences. And the one sort of thing that I went through, or rather, I went through a divorce that was very difficult, and then I had challenging relationships, friendships, family dynamics, and all of that. And when I went through that, I was quite young, and the one thing that I looked for was somebody who had a similar story, somebody who experienced all of these very difficult, challenging life experiences and who survived it, who wasn't broken and completely damaged by the whole situation.
Mm.
And as much as I kind of looked for that in my circle and in my community at the time, I wasn't able to find any individuals who spoke openly about it or who had similar experiences. And once I had kind of navigated that very difficult, very stressful terrain, I felt like I needed to share my experience. Sorry, not my experience, but share similar experiences with others that were going through something similar to kind of almost be that person that I was looking for when I went through those
Mhm.
situations, just to put it in a book so that someone who is going through difficult life situations, whether it's divorce, failed relationships, being single in your late 30s, 40s, etc., or difficult family dynamics, there's so much that goes on and we don't speak about it. And I just wanted to convey those stories, those situations, and just kind of put it in words so that somebody who's going through that can read through it and be like, okay, it's not just me that experiences this. It's not just me that has this very critical, self-critical thoughts in my head, there's other people that experience it, and this is how they navigate it. This is how they kind of get up, dust their knees, try again, fail again, try again, fail again. It's not like a linear process. So it was more just to convey that kind of a story to the reader.
There's so much in just what you've said and then the connect that you and I had before that I can relate with and resonate with personally. And it's spot on. It's going through a divorce, going through a failed relationship, and the people around you that you love the most, they don't understand it. And it's often, it feels like a very lonely journey because especially from a cultural perspective, a religious perspective, you're looked at and you're expected to make your marriage work. You're expected to make this relationship work. And there can be a list of reasons of why this specific relationship needs to work. You've made a commitment. There are vows. You need to fight for your marriage. But what the people on the outside are not always privy to is what's happening between you and your partner behind closed doors. And the effort and the sacrifices you're making for that individual to make that relationship work. And you can tick all the boxes and you can go to counseling. We've had these conversations and these things we've done as a couple. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then it's about leaving that life, but then also trying to explain to the people you care about around you who just don't get it, why you've made the decision to leave, because you're held to a certain standard. There's these rules, and you speak about the rules in your book, the rules that we have in our families. So there was so much that I could touch base with in terms of this character, in terms of our conversation, in terms of that space of relatedness. If we think about the societal pressures that we put on ourselves and that we grow up with, the rules, the unspoken rules of we need to have certain life boxes ticked. You need to get married by a certain age. You need to have a baby by a certain age. You need to have the house with a white picket fence, 2 dogs, at least 1 fish. Just these pictures, right, that people paint in terms of what life needs to look like. How do you see societal pressure building up in terms of why relationships fail? What is your lens and your view on that?
So I completely resonate with what you're saying. I call it the framework, and it's supposed to be this foolproof framework, right? We go to school and then we probably do some form of tertiary education, and you get the job, and then you move out of home, and all of that stuff, and you follow the steps. And sometimes the people around you get it so right because we're all kind of on that similar journey. And then
Mhm.
we meet somebody and get married, and now you're in the situation, and what next? But also, what happens when it's not that straightforward? Because yeah, you've got the education, and you've got the job, and you've done everything else, all of the precursor stuff, and but you can't find the right person, or you're in a relationship and it's not working for you. And no matter
Mhm.
how hard, and especially in the book, no matter how hard she tried to follow this framework, it wasn't meant to be. And because um in that situation where there's so much of pressure to be a certain way, because happiness is sold to us as you can only be happy if you are married with kids, and you're making it work, and you're going on holidays, or you are moving into a bigger home, or whatever the case is. There's just, you can only, happiness only looks like this, and we're sold that view of happiness from a very young age. And anyone who
Mhm.
goes against to the norm is then just, they're not happy, they don't have their life together. And the idea of this book is that I intended for it to challenge those norms. So I don't believe that the pressures always come from the wrong place, because a lot of the pressure is around the people that you have around you, which is usually your family and your friends. And because they have found happiness in the form of this kind of getting married at this age and having kids by these ages and going through that checklist and ticking each thing off, the assumption is that they have found happiness in these things, and because you don't have it, or you're following a different path, you're unhappy. Because how can you be alone and be happy? And it's those kinds of difficult pressures that are placed on you, because then you need to have, then there's the intervention, like, are you okay in this situation? Because you do everything by yourself, and you go on holidays by yourself. So is something wrong? Do you want us to set you up with someone? But actually, it's completely okay to live in a different way, to follow your life path, because we're all kind of just doing our thing, trying to get through life, trying to learn the life lessons and not kind of be completely, what's the word, knocked over by them, which often it happens. And the idea around the book is to accept that each person has a different life journey or a life path. And there's this really beautiful quote by a guru named Baba Ramdas. And he says, we're all just walking each other home. And I found that to be so beautiful and so powerful, because it's like, we're all just kind of walking towards our end destination, and we ebb and flow and we take different paths, and sometimes we go off for 2 years and we do something completely out of character, or we venture off what we've always known and find love or passion in a different place. And it's about just being true to yourself, being authentic, and following what is destined for you without the influence of society saying, no, but you have to do it this way. You have to follow the framework because I follow the framework and I'm happy. So what's wrong with you?
Yeah. I love the way that you've described it as the framework, because it needs to be this foolproof recipe, right? You go to school, you go to university, you study, there's the job, and you meet someone, and there's all these little tick boxes. And it's exactly what you're saying. When your framework looks different to someone else's framework, there's just this lack of understanding, and potentially can spiral into a lack of support because they don't know from their frame of reference how to support you. Um, what I love about what you've spoken about is, and the main character in the book, she has her sister, and her sister is validating her for, you're brave enough to walk out of a relationship where you're not happy. You're brave enough to go against the framework, for a lack of a better word. And my question to you is I don't think we always realize that we have that bravery within ourselves when we're younger, because there's almost this indoctrination of, you need to follow the framework. This is what life needs to look like. So we follow it blindly, for a lack of a better word. But for me, what stood out with his character is, she's a little bit older. She's in her 30s. Her heart's been broken many, many times. And there's almost this finding of herself. There's this finding of her own self-worth. There's this finding of what she loves and what she holds dear. And as she navigates these relationships, she's figuring that out. And it's not about societal norms, it's for the individual. And I see that so much in people who have either gone through a failed relationship, have gone through a divorce. If I think about who I was at the age of 29 when I got married, to who I am now on the cusp of 40, life looks different, right? Life looks different in terms of what I hold myself to as certain standards, what I want to achieve. And it's not so much about the outside world. It's about how I value myself. And that's where the bravery kicks in, right? Because you know what you're worth. And I think people struggle with that part. If we go back to the character, what was her coping mechanisms to find her worth and to find her bravery as she navigates life?
So I think with the main character, as much as she felt like after each relationship she had healed and she had figured out what her limiting beliefs were and what her traumas were, and she had resolved them and she was ready to move on and get into another relationship, it's only until you fail and fail again that you realize, okay, there's still some remnants of this issue that I haven't resolved. So in her situation, she had to continuously have certain experiences that showed her that perhaps, you're on the wrong path. And as much as we want to get angry with life and, feel we can curse the gods and the universe and blame it on Mercury retrograde and all of these things, the idea is that if you're on the wrong path, if you're looking for the wrong thing, you're going to find the wrong thing, and it's not going to make you happy, and it's not going to be as blissful as you expect. So when she found what she believed, that she was looking for, and it didn't work out in the way that she expected, it caused her to introspect and to reflect and to ask herself, like, is this actually what drives me? Is this part of my value system? And once she realized that she was chasing things because she was looking for probably acceptance or recognition in the wrong places or from her family, or trying to, again, follow that framework unsuccessfully, then she realized that maybe that framework is not for her. Maybe hers looks different. Her life
Mm-hmm.
path looks different. And what makes her happy is not necessarily what makes the people around her happy. And there's nothing specifically wrong with that. It's just that the life journey is different. So
Mm-hmm.
her process of healing was not a straightforward one. It wasn't, okay, this doesn't work for me. Let me just move on and try something different. It was like try and try and try again with the same thing and banging your head against the same wall until eventually, like, okay, something's wrong here because I keep making, or the character
Mm-hmm.
keeps making the same mistake over and over again. And it then caused her to look at certain childhood issues, look at relationships that she has in her family, with her parents, with her sister, with her friends, with herself specifically, and then also look at the way that she speaks to herself, judges herself. And that is why I also call it like a journey of self-love, because the only way to healing is to start to love yourself and to start to speak kindly to yourself, be more compassionate to yourself. And that is exactly what she started to do. And that is how she started to heal from those traumas and realize that what makes her happy is not necessarily what she was looking for all this time.
It's giving yourself the gift of grace. It's to be
Yeah.
kind to yourself. It's holding up the mirror, even when it's not a pretty picture, and really tapping into that deep, deep sense of what's happened before, traumas that we hold on to, holding up the mirror in terms of your responsibility and the part you've played and how all of this has fed into who you are today. And then being kind to yourself to embrace all those wounds and know that every single wound, every single scar has ultimately made you who you are. And that's a hard lens to hold. That's a hard mirror to hold. But that is ultimately for me unconditional love. So again, even just the reference of your book, the title of your book, this beautiful picture, all just speaks volumes. In the book, you do speak about authenticity, people potentially being inauthentic and wearing masks. Tell me more about that.
So I think there's a lot of people that, in their attempt to do things that are expected of them and to conform to societal pressures, they force themselves into a situation where they live unauthentically. So individuals that are in unhappy relationships or unhappy marriages or even unhappy
Mm-hmm.
work situations, but following that path or that journey because, you know, it looks good on paper, it looks good on social media. So even if um, you have that great job and you're earning a lot of money, or you're in that relationship with this wonderful person who appears wonderful on social media, behind closed doors, a lot of people are unhappy. They're in situations that don't bring them any joy, that bring them actually a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, possibly even depression. And they force themselves to walk that path and to stay on that journey because of societal pressure. And in the book,
Mm-hmm.
we look at individuals that are doing exactly that, um, and how it creates this environment of there's so much around us that is not based on the truth. That's completely out of touch with reality, and that is why the tagline at the bottom of the title is "Living imperfectly in a perfect world," because everyone around us seems to just be, everything is perfect and I'm so happy and everything's just working out. But the fact
Yeah.
is that it's not. And you'll find that people will often not just be true to who they are and, just come in to work on a day and say, I'm having a really bad day and I need to cry it out, and just
Mm-hmm.
spend 10 minutes letting it all out, confessing, or not confessing, but rather being honest about um, things are not working out. I'm not happy. And I think often people will attend an event like a family function or a social event or a work event, etc., and put this big smile on their face. And inside, they are completely falling apart, breaking down. And instead
Mm-hmm.
of taking that time with a trusted individual to just, be honest about, this is a situation, I'm not okay right now. Maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe I just need to go to the bathroom and to just cry it out or sit in my car for a few minutes. A lot of people, and myself as well, I'm guilty of having done this in the past as well, will just put up this brave face, completely composed, and everything's perfect, and no, I've never cried a day in my
Yeah.
life, kind of thing. And part of being authentic is being true to your feelings and being true to your emotions. And not everybody has a good day. Not every day is a good day. And not every relationship or situation is a good one. And I think that's where we come up with the idea that people wear masks all the time. And it's an unfortunate truth of the world that we live in these days. I think if we kind of embraced authenticity and were more accepting of different journeys, different life paths, and um, different life experiences, it would become so much easier to
Mm-hmm.
create an environment where we could be true to ourselves, true to our feelings, and it would generate open discussions, open, honest conversations, especially to the younger generations as well. So there's no longer things like composure and you have to look a certain way and behave a certain way and do certain things. It just creates so much room for freedom and living your life purpose and being true to who you are.
That's so beautifully articulated. I mean, while you were talking now, and I'm going to share very vulnerably, I hope I don't cry because I haven't put this out on any of the podcasts as yet. But oof, if my daughter ever asks me one day why I left, that will be my reason. It would be because mommy wanted to show you that it's okay to make big, brave decisions to be happy for yourself, not to fill other people's cups, but to fill yourself. Because if you can stay true, as you're saying, to that purpose and that meaning in terms of what joy and happiness means for you, there's this automatic ripple effect into the relationships around. And I don't know how I'm going to have that conversation with her one day. But that for me was a guiding compass. Is for the first time in my life, I felt like I really needed to choose myself because life felt like it was autopilot. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's rocking up at family events and maybe you're a little bit quieter than what you usually would, but you're arriving as a united front. I've got my husband on my side, I'm a proud wife, and I live into that title, into that role. And it's a lot of introspection. It's a lot of therapy. It was a lot of therapy for me to get to the space to really say, hold up the mirror and to say, I'm not happy and I need to find happiness for myself. I need to fill that cup again. So what you're sharing is so profound because I think so many people can genuinely relate to being something that they think others want them to be versus authentically being who they are, really uncovering their why, leaning into their vulnerability and what genuinely, authentically gives them joy. And again, there's just so many parts of your story and the narrative in this book that just resonates. And I think so many people are just going to find so much joy from this. Marishka, if I had to ask, what would you say were probably part of the top three things that your character pulled from in terms of core strengths to find her why, to find her purpose, to find herself? What would be those top three things that you think really comes through in the book that can give someone else hope and aspiration in terms of I can do this too?
Say a lot of introspection, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
self-reflection, honest, tough conversations. Um, one of the, and I don't want to give too much away, but one of the things that is kind of evident and it follows the thread of the book is the conversations that she had with herself in her mind were very, very self-critical and it was very damaging. And
Mm-hmm.
once she started to kind of see that and to see how she was speaking to herself and how she was judging herself so unfairly, so harshly, she was then able to rectify, well, try to rectify the behavior. And often the person that's judging us the harshest is ourselves. And that is one of the biggest takeaways for her. She was being unnecessarily difficult, okay, not difficult, but she was being unnecessarily cruel to herself. And it took
Mm-hmm.
the words of somebody who was close to her to kind of say, this is actually how I see you. And she compared that to how she sees herself. So often we see each other with this, sorry, we see ourselves with this lens that is so, it's so, it's almost like, you know, when you go to a hotel and you have that horrible mirror that's in the bathroom that shows every single stringy hair and open pore and pimple on your face. It's like that's how we see ourselves. It's with we see all of these imperfections, and actually they're not even imperfections. It's just who what makes us who we are. Because if we didn't have those hairs and those pores, our bodies or our skin wouldn't function the way it needed to. But what I'm trying to say is she looked at herself with this lens that was so harsh and it was so brutally judgmental. And once she started to kind of be kinder to herself and to love herself, she also started to then see with that same lens the things about
Mhm.
herself that were so beautiful, that were so innately hers and true to her character. And once she started to step into that and to live authentically, to live her life purpose, she was then able to start to heal from certain traumas and then to tackle um, individuals around her that, you know, broken relationships that needed to be repaired. So I think that was one of the biggest things. It was around loving herself. I'd say after that, it was, and I think everything kind of centers around that. The core
Mhm.
theme about self love, and around that would be, or below that would be the tools that she used. So it would be things like um, understanding what her childhood traumas were and what was driving her behavior or what was driving her incessant need to follow the framework and to get it right because everybody around her was getting it right and she couldn't. It would be things like that. It would be things like repairing relationships around her, going back to the root. And they always say, like, you know, the root is always at your parents because that is where initial views of a relationship. Um, so it's around those things, kind of going to the crux of trying to repair and uncover what it was about herself that needed to be healed and nurtured and kind of just held. That makes sense. I don't know if I've answered your question.
You have beautifully. And I think, again, that's why people say healing is so hard because it's dipping into the deepest parts of hurt. It's dipping into your deepest parts of vulnerability in order for you to heal. So yes, beautiful. Marishka, if we needed to, and I mean, I think you've already created such a beautiful bridge, but if you could share words of wisdom in terms of life experience, you throwing yourself into this book, creating this beautiful character, what would your words of wisdom be to any of the viewers or listeners who are dialing into this podcast?
I would say it's to be true to yourself, to live your life in a way that makes you happy. And as long as you're not
Mhm.
hurting anybody unnecessarily, I think it becomes easy to live your life purpose, to live authentically, to be true to yourself and what drives you. We're all here for a specific purpose. We're all walking each other home. And if we can do it with compassion, with love in our hearts, I think it just doesn't just make your journey easier, it makes the journeys of everybody else around you so much
Mhm.
easier.
We are walking each other home. That's officially going to become one of my new quotes. Rishka, how do we get a hold of your book? So I was really lucky to pick it up in Lonehill. How do we get this?
Okay, so the book is available at on the publisher's website. It's importpublishers.co.za. I think you'll post the link at the bottom.
I will do.
So if any listeners follow the link, they should be able to um, complete the online purchase and have the book delivered to their homes.
Beautiful. And social media, do you have any accounts that people could reach out to you on directly?
Yes, I'm on Instagram and on
Okay.
Facebook. And if anybody wants to reach out just regarding the sale of the book, or sorry, just regarding the book or any insights that they'd like to share, etc., I'm really happy to encourage those conversations.
Beautiful. Thank you. Is your kitty cat around the desk? I heard a bell.
Oh,
Oh, that's what we love about home.
yeah.
So I was double checking today to see if my daughter was going to be coming in and out because they're on holiday. So if it's between the fur babies and the human babies, we have our hands full. Marishka, thank you so much for your time this morning. Thank you just for leaning into the conversation, just for sharing so vulnerably just this character story, parts of your story. And for me, again, the takeaway is we're walking home, self-love, being kind to yourself. That to me is the crux of this conversation today. So thank you so, so much for leaning into this time with me.
Oops, I'm trying.
There's the cat. Love it.
You're so well behaved. And as soon as you spoke about it, she was like, oh, they're talking about me to make an appearance.
Very cute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chantal. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And it was really good to share insights and to have meaningful conversation. And there's so much that you've said and you've mentioned that has resonated with me. And also thank you for sharing so honestly. It means a lot. And yeah, I've enjoyed the experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Power and vulnerability. That's the only way. It really, really is. Have a beautiful day and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks so much, Chantal.
Bye.